Okay, track Andrea, please.
I said similarly, like women also fought for the suffrage because they wanted to cross over to the United States.
Okay.
So they fought for the right to vote.
Well, were there Mexicans that actually voted for Donald Trump?
Yeah.
They probably 10 feet under right now.
Potentially. I mean, I'm sure that there was somebody.
But it's Donald Trump's maids that are the ones that are so great.
Possibly. Okay, let's hear another sample sentence. Ewan, thank you. Track Ewan, please. Our voices are off.
Similarly, women also fought for their suffrage because they wanted their voice to be heard and they wanted the same privilege as men.
Good, awesome. So I like that you used the focus of what we're talking about today. Okay, so she said similarly, women also fought for their suffrage because they wanted the same rights as men. Okay, awesome. All right, we're going to watch a video, a brain pop video. The question that we're thinking about, Ryan. Okay, the question we're thinking about as we watch is what actions did women and also other activists take to promote women's suffrage? Okay, there are at least 3 or 4 different actions that people took in order to promote women's suffrage. So you just need to write down at least one as we watch. It's going on about 2 side conversations to stop.
I'm not telling you who I'm voting for, because I don't want to. Dear Tim and Bodie, when did women get the right to vote? From Alice. Well, it depends on what country you're talking about. In the U.S., the 19th Amendment to the Constitution gave women the right to vote, and it was officially passed in 1920. Well, it doesn't seem like a big deal now, but women really had to fight for that basic right. Traditionally, a woman's role in society was to stay at home and care for her family. And often, women weren't considered educated enough in local or national affairs to vote. Even in the earliest democracies, the right to vote was usually limited to free, landowning men. Over the years, some countries experimented with giving women limited voting rights. For instance, some women in colonial America who were members of landowning families could vote in town hall meetings. But oftentimes, these rights were later revoked or taken away. Things started to change for good in the 19th century. That's when the fight for women's suffrage really heated up. Oh, suffrage is just a fancy word for the right to vote. In the mid-1800s, women in various nations started to organize. At the time, their lives were really changing. Plumbing and electricity made running a home a little easier, and couples were having fewer children. More and more women were becoming educated and finding work outside of the home. Women were earning money and doing many of the same jobs as men, so they wanted equal rights. In 1848, 2 suffragists, Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, organized a women's rights convention in Seneca Falls, New York. It was the first of its kind in the U.S., and several hundred people attended, including a number of men who sympathized with the cause. Unfortunately, though, the conference was ridiculed by many people. Still, many women continued the fight. More trouble came after the U.S. Civil War, when American suffragists couldn't agree on a set of common goals. Some wanted to focus only on women's voting rights. But others, like Susan B. Anthony, wanted to fight for more than that. These women publicly disapproved of the Constitution's 15th Amendment, which granted former male slaves, but no women, the right to vote. But they also campaigned to end gender discrimination in employment and divorce laws. In 1890, the 2 sides decided to put aside their differences and merge. They formed the National American Women's Suffrage Association, or NAWSA. The NAWSA worked state by state trying to get women the right to vote. Its members protested, wrote letters, and organized rallies and marches, all in an effort to bring about change. Despite their hard work, by the turn of the century, only 4 U.S. states had given women the right to vote. Actually, in other countries, women were starting to have more success. Like in 1893, New Zealand became the first major self-governing country to give women the vote. Australia became the second in 1902. In 1903, British suffragists led by Emmeline Pankhurst formed the Women's Social and Political Union. This women's suffrage group actually resorted to tactics like window breaking, harassment, and even bombing to get their message across, so their members sometimes got arrested. Well, when World War I broke out, women's suffrage got the final push it needed. Back in the US, some 2 million women in the NAWSA were working to support the war. So suffragists staged large marches and protests. They finally had a voice loud enough to catch President Woodrow Wilson's ear. Wilson urged Congress to pass the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. It went through several votes in the House and Senate, but it was finally ratified in the summer of 1920. Over the next few decades, more and more countries granted women suffrage. Today, there are only a handful of countries that don't allow women to vote. Hey, you can't come in with me.
Alright, take about a minute to jot down your answer. Let's do this silently, please. Please do this without talking by yourself. Okay, take 30 more seconds. Oops. You're right. You have 30 minutes to write your one answer. Yay. Do I not have 30 seconds? Oh, here it is. All right. Okay, 30 more seconds. Jot down your answer. We're doing this by ourselves. Alright, we get some volunteers to share out what were some actions that women and other activists took to promote women's suffrage. Okay, thank you, Andrea, for volunteering. We've heard from Andrea a few times today. Let's hear from some other people too. Chris.
The action that women took to promote women's suffrage was they participated in marches.
Okay, I like that you used a complete sentence. So the actions that women took to promote women's suffrage were protests. And then what was the end that you said? Okay, and marches. Awesome. Ewan, what else can we add?
We also formed organization and union
Okay.
to promote that action.
Okay, good. They also formed organizations and unions. Yeah.
Plan protest marches.
Well, it took them basically 2 centuries to get to the United States.
Yeah, about 100 years almost. And to plan for change, right? Okay, Arlie.
They also did what a man was expected to do because that way they would be viewed as equal and they wanted the right to vote. So
Awesome. These are the best answers I've heard today. Okay, good. So yeah, they also did what men were expected to do so that they would be viewed as equal. Okay, this way they had really good evidence for their argument, right? To support why it is that they believe that women should also have the right to vote. Okay, I see a few people still writing. We'll take about 10 more seconds to make any additions to your answer. Okay, so something that they mentioned in the video was the Seneca Falls Convention. Okay, this was one of the first big conventions. What is a convention? Anybody know, what is a convention? Like if people gather together, thank you, for a convention, what is that? Ugo, what did you say? interesting meeting, but it's a meeting with a purpose, right? So we're going to talk about the Seneca Falls Convention that happened in 1848. All right, so our directions. Michelle, will you read our directions, please?
Follow along the study of text to help us build proper knowledge about women's suffrage.
Bunk.
Focus question, underline evidence about answer the focus question. Write notes in the summarizing, clarifying questions, reactions, connections, circle,
Awesome, thank you. So our focus question, we're going to do this one together. Okay, and then the last 10 minutes of class you'll do independent practice on your own. Okay? So both of the documents, really we're looking at 4 different documents today. They're all 4 are going to be primary sources. Okay? So the focus question for this one says, what is the message being conveyed at the Seneca Falls Convention? So what are they arguing for here at this convention, at this meeting with a purpose? Okay, our source says Declaration of Sentiments, written in 1848. I'm first going to circle 1848 and put my first note in the margin. What was happening in 1848? Or maybe what hadn't happened yet.
1848, women's rights.
Okay, women's rights is one. What else was still going on? What injustice was still going on? Slavery was still happening. Okay, this was before the Civil War. So I'm going to put slavery still happening. Okay? So while people are still fighting for the abolition of slavery, now we have also women who are starting to fight for equal rights for women as well. All right, I'm going to read the historical context and ask for some volunteers for the rest. Okay, it says, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, who are mentioned in the video, 2 American activists in the movement to abolish slavery, organized the first conference to address women's rights and issues in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. The Declaration of the Seneca Falls Convention was signed by 68 women and 32 men. Okay, so moving on, before we start, I want you to number your paragraphs. Okay, so over on the left-hand side, I want you to go ahead and number. Okay, we should have 7 paragraphs. Okay, can I please have a volunteer to read paragraph 1? Angel, thank you. Please make sure that you are following along on your text and you're marking the text as we do up here.
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inherent rights that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Whenever any form of knowledge becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of those who suffer from to refuse alliance loyalty to it, and it is upon the institution of the new order of history running its history of included and used in observations taking on the part of many man towards women having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over them.
Awesome, thank you. So the one that I underlined here was the sentence in the 5th line, where it starts, the history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and taking away power on the part of man toward woman. Okay, so what can we do for the margins here, for this first underline of evidence? What can we put in the margin that would either be summarizing, a question, clarification? Let's make sure we're not even having whisper-side conversations. I know we're all trying to think about what it is we're doing right now. Andrea?
Maybe I would like issues over more power than women.
Okay, so you're doing like a clarifying statement. Okay, so man taking more power over women. All right, let's look at paragraph Asante, please read 2 and 3 for us.
He has never permitted her to exercise her, what does that say?
Inalienable?
Inalienable right to the franchise, right to vote. He has compelled her to submit to laws and information for which she has had no voice. He becomes in marriage for all intents and purposes. The master of the law has the power to deprive her of her liberty and to diminish her punishments.
Thank you. Okay, so writing the margins for these 2 statements. I'm going to say for the first one, that one's kind of self-explanatory, right? Exactly just saying that there is no right to vote for women. Paragraph 3, this one is a little bit surprising. So in my margin, I might put like a reaction. It says, in marriage, he becomes her master. Okay, that sounds like a pretty negative connotation. Okay, so I'm going to put a question of like, what does this mean? Because it might be a different kind of, since this is a primary source written in 1848, it might be a different kind of connotation of the word master. So I'm going to ask, what does master mean in this context? Does it mean what we might think for it to mean, and like that he has total control over her, or does it mean something different? Okay, maybe we'll find out here as we continue. All right, paragraph 4 and 5. Can I have a different volunteer? Ugo, thank you.
No, this is right.
Where it starts to close against, yeah.
It closes against all her
Avenues?
avenues to welcome this distinction which he considers most honorable to himself as a teacher of religion, medicine, or law. She is not known. He has given to the world a different code of morals for men and women, which morals still link crimes, which exclude women from society, are not only tolerated but deemed as significations in men.
Thank you. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so again, back to the margins. It says he closes her all the avenues to wealth. What do you think that means?
Chances.
Okay, chances of getting what?
Getting money, power.
Yeah, so even any chance to use money, right? So he's saying like, no women are even allowed to be responsible for money, okay? They don't have the intelligence to do that. Okay, so can't, you're right, can't handle money. Okay, paragraph 5, a different code of morals for men and women. What are morals? Yeah, Jared. Kind of like lessons. So we have certain morals that we follow. What can we replace morals with for like a synonym? Arlene?
So you can say things you live for? I don't know.
Yeah, things you live by, or like ethical rules, right? Your ethics, like what you believe in. So morals are kind of like rules led by beliefs. So depending on what your beliefs are about what you think is morally right or morally wrong, okay, they're saying that women and men had different morals, like different standards that they had to live by. So women had a little bit more strict expectations in society in terms of their morals. Okay, how about for paragraph 6 and then 7 to finish this up here? Andrea, why don't you read paragraph 6? And then Erica's going to finish this up with 7.
Says in the board in every way that he could to destroy her confidence in her own powers, to lessen himself respect, and to make him willing to lead a dependent and objective life.
Thank you. Last one, Erica. Pause. A little bit louder. Thank you.
Now in view of this, compared to enfranchisement of one half the people of this country, in view of the endless line of influences on because women use themselves as during the death of the first, but truly the fact of the most sacred life, and to that they have immediate attention to all the ways and who to think about, so as nation and the world.
Thank you. Okay, looking at paragraph 6, it says that he has endeavored in every way that he could to destroy her confidence.